By the time the police arrived at the workshop, the sun had already gone down, and a young man's blood was still on the concrete. They found him lying between the two ramps, the same place where he and his brother used to play as children, back when the garage was just their father's dream. That night, neighbors said they heard shouting, metal crashing, and then a silence so heavy even the crickets outside went quiet. In this family, brotherhood died long before that night. It died slowly, piece by piece, dollar by dollar, lie by lie. And if you ask anyone in that neighborhood how it started, they will tell you the same thing. It started the day their father fell sick and made one terrible mistake. He chose a favorite. The Okafor brothers were not always enemies. There was a time when Emeka and Chukwudi were inseparable. Their father, Papa Okafor, owned a modest auto repair shop along Aba Road in Port Harcourt. Nothing fancy, just a large zinc-roofed space with 3 work bays, oil-stained floors, and the constant smell of engine grease mixed with welding smoke. Papa Okafor was a man of few words, but strong principles. He woke up at 5 every morning, opened the workshop by 6, and worked until the sun went down. He taught his sons everything he knew: how to diagnose engine sounds just by listening, how to replace brake pads without rushing, how to speak to customers with respect, even when they doubted your price. Emeka was the elder brother by 3 years. He was 28 years old, tall and broad-shouldered, with his father's serious face and careful hands. He had spent 12 years learning the trade, starting from when he was 16, sweeping floors and organizing tools. Emeka never went to university. His father couldn't afford it, but he didn't complain. He learned every detail of the business: how to manage inventory, how to negotiate with spare parts dealers, how to handle difficult customers. He became his father's right hand. Chukwudi was different. He was 25, shorter than his brother, but quicker in his movements. He had attended technical college for 2 years before dropping out, and he had a sharp tongue that made customers laugh. While Emeka was patient and methodical, Chukwudi was fast and creative. He could fix problems Emeka couldn't, not because he was better, but because he thought differently. He took risks, he improvised. Sometimes it worked brilliantly. Sometimes it caused bigger problems. Their father treated them equally, or so it seemed. Every evening after work, Papa Okafor would gather his sons under the cashew tree outside the workshop and talk to them about life, about integrity, about how a man's name is his greatest asset. Both brothers listened, both respected him, and both believed the workshop would one day belong to them equally. But life has a way of revealing truths people tried to hide. 3 years before that terrible night, Papa Okafor began experiencing chest pains. At first, he ignored them. Then they became sharper, more frequent. Mama Okafor forced him to go to the hospital. The test came back with words that changed everything: congestive heart failure. The doctor said it clearly: you need to reduce stress. No more heavy lifting, no more long hours. And you need regular medication, which is expensive. Papa Okafor sat in that clinic room, his hands shaking slightly as he held the prescription paper. He was only 57 years old, but suddenly, he looked much older. That evening, he gathered his 2 sons in the small office at the back of the workshop. "I can't run this place the way I used to," he said, his voice quieter than usual. "My body is failing me. The doctor said I need rest. But this business is all we have. It feeds all of us. Your mother, your sisters, everyone." Emeka leaned forward. "Papa, we will handle it. Chukwudi and I can run everything. You just rest and take your medication." Chukwudi nodded quickly. "Yes, Papa. We know this business. We've been working here all our lives. Don't worry." Papa Okafor looked at both of them for a long moment. Then he said something that changed everything. "Emeka, you will be in charge. You will manage the money, the customers, the staff. Everything goes through you. Chukwudi, you will focus on repairs. You're faster with your hands. Emeka is better with management." The room went quiet. Chukwudi's smile faded slightly, but he said nothing. Emeka looked uncomfortable, but nodded slowly. Papa Okafor continued. "This is not about favoritism. This is about structure. Every business needs one person to make final decisions, or there will be confusion." Chukwudi forced himself to speak. "I understand, Papa." But he didn't. Not really. That night, lying on his mat in the small room he shared with Emeka, Chukwudi stared at the ceiling and felt something cold settle in his chest. He had worked just as hard as his brother. He knew just as much, maybe more in some areas. But his father had chosen Emeka to lead, chosen Emeka to control the money, chosen Emeka to be the head. Emeka, sensing the tension, whispered in the darkness, "Chukwudi, this doesn't change anything between us. We're still brothers. We'll run this place together." Chukwudi turned his face to the wall. "I heard you. But something had already shifted, and neither of them knew how deep the crack would grow. For the first year, things went smoothly. Emeka managed the accounts, dealt with suppliers, and handled customer complaints. Chukudi focused on the technical work, fixing engines, doing diagnostics, training the apprentices. They worked side by side, barely speaking about the arrangement, pretending everything was fine. But small resentments are like rust. They spread slowly, eating away at metal until the whole structure weakens. Chukudi began noticing things. When customers praised the work, they thanked Emeka, even when Chukudi had done the actual repair. When suppliers came with deals, they negotiated with Emeka. When important decisions needed to be made, Emeka made them, sometimes without even asking Chukwudi's opinion. One afternoon, a wealthy man brought his Range Rover for a major engine overhaul. It was a big job, the kind that could bring in serious money. Chukwudi spent 3 days working on it, barely sleeping, making sure every detail was perfect. When the customer came to collect the vehicle, he was amazed. "This engine sounds brand new. You people are magicians." He handed Emeka an envelope with the payment, plus an extra 50,000 naira as a tip for exceptional work. Emeka accepted it with a smile, thanked the customer, and walked him out. When he returned, Chukwudi was standing there, wiping his hands on a rag, waiting. "The tip," Chukwudi said quietly. "I should get it. I did the work." Emeka looked surprised. "This money goes into the business account. You know that." "It was a personal tip for good work. My work." "Chukwudi, we don't separate money like that here. Everything goes into one account, and we all benefit. That's how Papa set it up." Chukwudi's jaw tightened. "Papa set you up to control everything. That's what he did." Emeka's face hardened. "I'm managing this business the way Papa asked me to. If you have a problem with that, take it up with him." Chukwudi threw the rag on the floor and walked out. He didn't return to the workshop until the next morning. And when he didn't speak to Emeka unless it was about work. The silence between them grew. Days became weeks, weeks became months. They stopped eating together, stopped joking, stopped sitting under the cashew tree. They communicated through the apprentices or through short, cold sentences. Mama Okafor noticed. She tried to intervene. "You boys are brothers. You grew up in the same womb. Why are you treating each other like strangers?" Emeka replied, "Mama, we're fine. We're just busy." Chukwudi said nothing at all. Papa Okafor also noticed, but he was too weak to mediate. The medication kept him alive, but left him tired, distant, sleeping most of the day. He had handed over control, and now he couldn't take it back, even if he wanted to. The real breaking point came during the rainy season, 2 years after Papa Okafor's diagnosis. Business had been slow for weeks. Customers weren't coming in as often. The workshop needed new equipment. The roof was leaking, and rent was due. Emeka, as the manager, made a decision. He used part of their savings to buy a diagnostic machine, a computerized tool that would allow them to service newer cars with complex electronic systems. The machine cost 450,000 naira. It was expensive, but Emeka believed it was necessary for the business to grow. He didn't tell Chukwudi until after the purchase. When Chukwudi found out, he was in the middle of fixing a gearbox. One of the apprentices mentioned it casually. "Oga Emeka said the new diagnostic machine is arriving tomorrow." Chukwudi froze. "What diagnostic machine?" "The one he bought, for checking modern car computers." Chukwudi dropped his tools and walked straight to the office. Emeka was sitting behind the desk, writing in the accounts ledger. Chukwudi didn't knock. "You spent 450,000 naira without telling me?" Emeka looked up calmly. "We needed it. The business is changing. We can't keep losing customers with electronic issues to other workshops. I'm your partner in this business. You should have discussed it with me. You're my brother. You're a mechanic here, but Papa put me in charge of financial decisions." Chukwudi's hands clenched into fists. "So I'm just a mechanic now? Just a worker in my own father's shop?" Emeka stood up, his voice rising. "I'm trying to grow this business, Chukwudi. I'm trying to make sure we all eat. You think I like making these decisions alone? But somebody has to." "You like the power," Chukwudi said quietly. "That's what you like. Being the boss. Being the one Papa chose." Emeka's face flushed with anger. "If you spent less time complaining and more time supporting me, maybe we'd get somewhere." Chukwudi turned and walked out without another word. But that night, something inside him snapped. For the first time, he thought about leaving, about starting his own workshop, about proving he didn't need Emeka or his father's approval. But leaving required money, and all the money was in Emeka's control. So Chukwudi made a decision that would lead them all to destruction. He decided to take what he believed was his. It started small. A customer would pay cash for a repair, and Chakwudi would pocket a portion before recording the rest in the ledger. Not much, 5,000 here, 10,000 there. He convinced himself it was fair. He was the one doing most of the actual work. He deserved more than whatever allowance Emeka decided to give him at the end of the month. The first time he did it, his hands shook as he slipped the money into his pocket. But the customer didn't notice. Emeka didn't notice. And the guilt faded faster than he expected. By the second month, it felt almost routine. Chakwudi had a separate account now, one Emeka didn't know about. He was saving money, planning his exit. He told himself he would leave peacefully, start fresh, avoid confrontation. But secrets in a family business never stay hidden for long. Emeka began noticing discrepancies. The cash flow didn't match the number of customers. They were getting steady work, but the account balance was lower than it should be. At first, he thought maybe he'd made calculation errors. He rechecked the ledger, recounted the cash. The numbers still didn't add up. He didn't want to believe what his mind was suggesting, so he did something he hated himself for. He started watching Chakwudi. One Saturday afternoon, a woman came to collect her repaired car. Chakwudi handled the transaction while Emeka pretended to be busy in the office. Through the window, Emeka watched his brother accept the cash payment, count it, and then slip several notes into his pocket before walking to the office to record a lower amount in the ledger. Emeka felt something break inside his chest. Betrayal is painful from a stranger. From a brother, it's unbearable. He didn't confront Chakwudi immediately. He wanted to be sure. He wanted proof. For 2 more weeks, he watched and documented. 3 more times he caught Chakwudi doing the same thing, taking money, lying in the ledger. Finally, on a quiet Tuesday evening, after all the apprentices had gone home, Emeka locked the workshop gate and walked to where Chakwudi was cleaning his tools. "How long have you been stealing from the business?" Chakwudi's hand stopped moving. He didn't turn around. "I don't know what you're talking about. I've been watching you. I know what you've been doing. Taking cash and recording lower amounts? How long, Chakwudi?" Chakwudi slowly turned around, his face hard. "Stealing? You call it stealing when I take a small part of what I earn with my own hands? It's stealing when you lie about it and hide it from the accounts. You control all the money, Emeka. You decide how much I get, how much you get, what we spend. I have no say, so yes, I took what I deserved." Emeka's voice rose. "What you deserved? We're supposed to be running this business together. You're not some hired hand, you're my brother." "Then treat me like your brother," Chakwudi shouted back. "Not like your employee, not like someone who needs your permission to breathe. Papa put me in charge for a reason, because he knew you'd do something like this. He knew you couldn't be trusted with responsibility." The words landed like a punch. Chakwudi's face went pale, then red with rage. "Papa chose you because you're the firstborn. That's the only reason. Not because you're better, not because you're smarter, just because you came out first." "If I'm so terrible, then leave," Emeka yelled. "Take whatever money you've stolen and start your own workshop. See how far you get without me." "Maybe I will," Chakwudi yelled back. "Maybe I'll finally be free from standing in your shadow." They stood there, breathing hard, staring at each other across a distance that felt like miles. Neither of them knew how to step back. Neither wanted to be the first to apologize. So they didn't. Emeka turned and walked to the office. "I'm locking the cash box from now on. I'm the only one with the key. If you don't like it, we can go tell Papa what you've been doing." Chakwudi said nothing. He just watched his brother walk away, and something cold and final settled in his heart. That night, neither of them went home. Emeka slept in the office, and Chakwudi slept in the workshop, on a mat between the ramps, the same place where they used to play as children, back when they loved each other without complication. The final. Destruction came 3 weeks later, on a Friday night. Most people had assumed the brothers would eventually reconcile. Mama Okafor prayed about it every morning. Papa Okafor, in his few lucid moments, asked about them, and both brothers lied to his face, saying everything was fine. But everything was not fine. The workshop had become a cold, tense place. Emeka and Chakwudi barely spoke. When they did, it was through clenched teeth. Customers sensed the hostility. Apprentices became nervous and quiet. The business that Papa Okafor had built with love and sweat was rotting from the inside. On that Friday, Emeka received a call from one of their major suppliers. The man's voice was angry. "Emeka, why haven't you paid your account balance? It's been 3 months. I trusted you people." Emeka's stomach dropped. "What balance? I paid that account in full 6 weeks ago." "You paid half. You still owe 430,000 naira. "That's impossible. I gave the money to..." Emeka stopped. His blood went cold. Who did I give the money to? Your brother, Chukwudi. He came here, said you sent him with partial payment and that he'd return with the rest, but I haven't seen him since. Emeka's hand tightened around the phone. I'll call you back. He hung up and sat frozen for a moment. Then he opened the accounts ledger and went through every entry from the past 3 months. His hands started shaking. There were discrepancies everywhere, amounts that didn't match receipts, expenses recorded that he didn't remember approving, cash withdrawals with vague descriptions. He calculated quickly. Nearly 700,000 naira was missing. Emeka stood up so fast his chair fell backward. He walked out of the office and found Chukwudi under a car, replacing an oil pan. His voice was dangerously quiet. Where is the money? Chukwudi slid out from under the car, his face smeared with grease. What money? 700,000 naira, missing from our accounts. The supplier just called. You took money meant for him and never delivered it. Where is it, Chukwudi? Chukwudi stood up slowly, wiping his hands. He didn't deny it. I needed it. You needed it? Emeka's voice cracked with disbelief. You stole 700,000 naira because you needed it? I'm starting my own workshop, Chukwudi said flatly. I already found a space. I already bought equipment. I'm leaving. Emeka stared at his brother like he was looking at a stranger. You destroyed Papa's business to start your own? You stole from our family? This was never my family's business, Chukwudi shot back. It was yours. Papa made it yours. You made sure I knew I was just a worker here. So yes, I took what I needed to start my own life. Sue me. You're not leaving, Emeka said, his voice shaking with rage. You're going to return that money, every single naira, or I'm reporting you to the police. Chukwudi laughed bitterly. Report your own brother? Papa will be. So proud. Papa trusted us. He trusted you, and you spat on that trust. Papa chose you, Chukwudi screamed. He chose you for everything, and you enjoyed it. You enjoyed being the favorite, being the boss, controlling everything. So don't talk to me about trust. Emeka stepped forward, his fists clenched. Return the money, Chukwudi. Now. I don't have it anymore. I spent it. Then you'll work it off. Every naira. I don't care how long it takes. I'm not working for you anymore, Chukwudi said, his voice cold. I'm done. I'm leaving tonight. You're not going anywhere. Chukwudi turned his back on Emeka and started walking toward the gate. Emeka grabbed his shoulder and spun him around. I said you're not leaving. Chukwudi shoved him hard. Don't touch me. Emeka shoved back. You're a thief, a liar, and you're a tyrant, just like I always knew you'd be. The shove became a push. The push became a grab. And then they were fighting, really fighting. The way brothers who have held too much anger for too long eventually do. Fists flew. They crashed into toolboxes, knocked over oil drums, slammed into the walls. The apprentices who had been watching from outside ran to get help. Neighbors heard the shouting and crashing, but were too afraid to intervene. At some point, Chukwudi grabbed a wrench from the workbench. Emeka saw it and grabbed a metal bar that was leaning against the wall. They stood there, breathing hard, weapons in hand, staring at each other with eyes full of hate and heartbreak. Put it down, Emeka said quietly. You put yours down first. Chukwudi, please, don't make this worse. It's already worse. It's been worse for years. You just didn't want to see it. And then, whether by accident or intention, no one would ever be completely sure, Chukwudi swung the wrench. Emeka tried to block it with the metal bar. The two weapons collided with a harsh clang, and the force knocked the bar from Emeka's hand. The wrench kept moving. It caught Emeka on the side of the head. The sound was sickening. Emeka's eyes went wide, and then his legs gave out. He collapsed between the two ramps, the same place where he and his brother used to play as children, back when the garage was just their father's dream. Blood began pooling on the concrete. Chukwudi stood frozen, the wrench still in his hand, staring at his brother's body. His breathing came in short, panicked gasps. Emeka? Emeka, get up. Emeka didn't move. I didn't mean to. Emeka, please. Get up. Still nothing. The blood kept spreading, dark and terrible in the dim workshop light. Chukwudi dropped the wrench. It hit the floor with a clatter that sounded impossibly loud in the sudden silence. He fell to his knees beside his brother, his hands shaking, reaching out but afraid to touch. Oh God, what did I do? Somewhere outside, someone was screaming for help. Someone else was running to call an ambulance. But inside that workshop, there was only Chokuri and Emeka, and the terrible, irreversible thing that had just happened. By the time the police arrived, the sun had already gone down, and a young man's blood was still on the concrete. The ambulance came 20 minutes later. The paramedics worked quickly, checking Emeka's pulse, stabilizing his neck, loading him onto a stretcher. One of them said, "He's alive, but barely. We need to move fast." Chokuri tried to follow the stretcher, but a police officer held him back. "You're not going anywhere. You're coming with us." At the station, Chokuri sat in a holding cell, his hands still shaking, Emeka's blood still on his shirt. He kept replaying the moment in his mind. The swing, the sound, the fall. He hadn't meant to hurt Emeka that badly. He'd just been so angry, so hurt, so tired of feeling small. But intention doesn't matter when your brother is dying. Mama Okafor arrived at the police station near midnight, her wrapper tied hastily, her face destroyed with grief. They wouldn't let her see Chokuri yet, but he could hear her wailing from his cell. My sons! What have you done to each other?" Papa Okafor came later, brought by relatives because he was too weak to walk far. When he was told what happened, he didn't cry. He just sat on a bench outside the station, staring at nothing, his breathing shallow. Someone said he whispered, "I destroyed them. This is my fault." At the hospital, Emeka underwent emergency surgery for a skull fracture and brain bleed. The doctor said the next 48 hours would determine if he lived or died. Mama Okafor sat in the waiting room, her Bible clutched in her hands, praying in whispers. Chokuri sat in his cell, wondering if he had just become his brother's murderer. 3 days later, Emeka opened his eyes, weak, confused, in terrible pain, but alive. The doctor said it was a miracle. Another centimeter to the left, and the blow would have killed him instantly. When Mama Okafor told Chokuri the news during a brief visit, he collapsed with relief. Thank God. Is he asking for me?" His mother's face went hard. "He doesn't know what happened yet. The doctors say we shouldn't tell him anything stressful while he recovers. But when he finds out, Chokuri, when he learns what you did, I don't know if he'll ever forgive you." "Mama, I didn't mean to." "It doesn't matter what you meant," her voice broke. "You almost killed your brother over money, over pride. How did you two become this?" Chokuri had no answer. The case went to court. Emeka, still recovering, testified from a wheelchair. His head was bandaged, his left side partially paralyzed from the injury. He spoke slowly, painfully. Yes, they fought. Yes, Chokuri hit him. But when the prosecutor asked if he wanted his brother imprisoned, Emeka closed his eyes. "He's my brother," he said quietly. "He made a terrible mistake. So did I. I pushed him to that point. I didn't listen. I didn't share. I acted. Like I was his boss instead of his brother." The prosecutor pressed. "Sir, he nearly killed you." "I know," Emeka said. "But destroying his life won't fix mine." The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, looked between the two brothers and then at their parents sitting in the gallery. She took a long moment before speaking. "This court has seen many cases of violence between brothers, usually over land, over inheritance, over women. But this case is different. This case is about two young men who loved each other once and forgot how, who let pride and resentment poison what should have been partnership." She looked at Chokuri. "You are guilty of assault causing grievous harm. Under normal circumstances, you would face years in prison. But your brother has asked for mercy, and your father is here, broken, begging for his family to be spared further destruction." She paused. "I'm sentencing you to 3 years suspended sentence, 5 years probation, mandatory anger management counseling, and full restitution of the money you stole. You will work to repay every naira, and you will do community service. If you violate any term of this sentence, you will serve the full prison term. Do you understand?" Chokuri nodded, tears streaming down his face. "Yes, Ma. Thank you." The judge wasn't finished. She looked at both brothers. "But I'm also ordering something else. Both of you will attend family counseling together for 1 year. Not because I think you'll reconcile. Maybe that's impossible now. But because you need to understand what you destroyed and why. You need to learn that a father's business is not worth a brother's blood." She slammed her gavel. Court dismissed. The workshop stayed closed for 8 months. Papa Okafor passed away 5 months after the incident, his heart finally giving out under the weight of grief. At his funeral, Emeka and Chukwudi stood on opposite sides of the grave, unable to look at each other. Mama Okafor buried her husband and then sold the workshop. She couldn't bear to keep it. The place that was supposed to be Papa Okafor's legacy had become a crime scene, a symbol of everything that went wrong. Emeka recovered slowly, learning to walk properly again, regaining most of his strength. But the partial paralysis in his left hand never fully healed. He couldn't do mechanic work anymore. He took a job as a technical instructor at a vocational school, teaching young people about engines and integrity. Chukwudi never opened his own workshop. The money he'd stolen was gone, spent on equipment he had to sell to pay restitution. He worked odd jobs, saved slowly, paid his debt bit by bit. He attended the counseling sessions as ordered, sitting in uncomfortable silence while the therapist tried to make them talk to each other. For the first 6 months, neither brother said much. They answered the therapist's questions with short, empty words. Yes, no, I don't know. The wound was too fresh, the betrayal too deep. But during one session, near the end of the year, the therapist asked a simple question. What did you lose? Emeka spoke first, his voice hoarse. I lost my father. I lost my health. I lost the business he built. The therapist turned to Chukwudi. And you? Chukwudi stared at his hands for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked. I lost my brother. I lost the person I used to be. I lost the chance to make my father proud. Do you miss him? The therapist asked. Your brother? Chukwudi looked up, his eyes red. Every day. Emeka looked at him for the first time in months. Really looked at him. And he saw what he hadn't allowed himself to see before. Chukwudi was broken too. Destroyed by guilt, by shame, by the knowledge that he had hurt the person he once loved most in the world. I miss my brother too, Emeka said quietly. But I don't know if he still exists. I don't know if we can ever be who we were. Maybe you can't, the therapist said. Maybe that version of you both died in that workshop. But maybe, if you choose, you can become something new. Not brothers the way you were, but brothers who understand what almost destroyed them and refuse to let it win. That was the first conversation. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was the beginning of something. 2 years later, on the anniversary of Papa Okafor's death, Emeka and Chukwudi met at their father's grave. Mama Okafor was there too, standing between them, her hands holding each of her sons. Chukwudi had brought flowers. Emeka had brought a photo of the 3 of them, taken years ago when the workshop was still full of hope. They stood in silence for a while, each lost in their own memories and regrets. Finally, Chukwudi spoke. I'm sorry, Papa. I destroyed what you built. I'm sorry I let you down. Emeka added quietly, I'm sorry too. I forgot what you taught us. I forgot that business is nothing without family. Mama Okafor squeezed both their hands. Your father loved you both equally. That's the truth. But he made a mistake by choosing one of you to lead without explaining why. And you both made mistakes by letting pride and hurt turn into hate. She looked at them with tears in her eyes. I've lost my husband. I almost lost both my sons. I'm not losing any more family to anger. So I'm telling you both now. Forgive each other. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but before I join your father, I want to see my sons as brothers again. Emeka turned to Chukwudi. The younger brother looked older now, worn down by guilt and hard work. Emeka saw the scar above his own eye in the reflection of Chukwudi's glasses. They were both marked by that night, both changed forever. I don't know if we can be like before, Emeka said slowly, but maybe we can try to be something. Not partners, maybe not even close, but not enemies. Chukwudi nodded, his throat tight. I'll take that. I'll take anything that's not hate. They didn't embrace. The wound was still too deep for that. But they stood together at their father's grave, and for the first time in years, they weren't on opposite sides. 5 years after that terrible night, Emeka was teaching an evening class when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Hello? Emeka, it's me, Chukwudi. His heart skipped. They hadn't spoken in months, maybe longer. Their relationship had settled into polite distance. They saw each other at family events, exchanged brief greetings, and kept moving. It was the best they could manage. What's wrong? Emeka asked. Is Mama okay? Mama is fine. I'm calling about something else. Chukudi paused. I've been offered a job, managing a workshop in Abuja. Good pay, proper structure, but I wanted to tell you first before I accept. Why are you telling me? Because the owner asked if I had references. I told him my story, everything. He said if my brother can confirm that I've changed, that I'm trustworthy now, he'll hire me. But if not, he won't take the risk. Emeka was silent. This was the moment. The chance to forgive or to condemn, to free his brother or keep him chained to his past. What do you want me to say? Emeka asked quietly. The truth, Chukudi replied. Whatever that is for you. Emeka thought about his father, about the workshop that no longer existed, about the blood on concrete, about the years of pain and slow healing.